And welcome to TikTok with Laku. And in this episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Mayra Olivares-Urueta. She is Vice President for Student Development Services at Tarrant County College and the Northeast campus in Dallas. And she's got 2 degrees from OU, an undergraduate degree in European Studies and Spanish, and a master's degree in Human Relations. And then she went on to do her PhD at the University of North Texas in higher education. I love the abbreviation, Dr. OU. So I first listened to her at a recruiting event for OU in Dallas, and I've always wanted her to have her on this webcast. So welcome, Mayra.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm so excited to be part of this great show you have going on.
Thank you very much. So let's dive right in. And you have such a great story, and you shared some of it when I was back in Dallas with a lot of people. And would you care to share that with people watching this?
Sure. So a lot of life in a few minutes.
Yes.
I am the daughter of a widowed mother. We lived in Mexico until I was 10 years old. And my mother decided, like many families, millions of families, that she wanted to move to the US. So we moved to San Antonio, Texas when I was 10 years old. No English. So it was quite the study abroad opportunity. But I grew up in San Antonio. After I graduated high school, I attended OU as the only school that I applied for, and thankfully it all worked out. At OU, I went to study European studies, as you mentioned, and I had big dreams for myself outside of the country, just working at an embassy or the UN. But as a student who was on financial aid, I needed to work. And so through my work study opportunity, I started working in the student life office, and that changed my life forever. From that point, I decided that I needed to be in student affairs. I had no idea that there were people at a university outside of professors that made it all help to run, right? We're all a vital part of the team, faculty and staff. And so right when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I decided I should become a vice president for student affairs, just like Clark Stroud at the moment. So that's when my goal was set. And that's when I knew I had to get a degree, a doctorate. So I got well on my way to doing that. I worked at OU in 2 different positions in 2 years. And after that, I moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to be with my husband, who is also an OU alum. And during the time that I was in my first job here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is when I completed my doctorate, got married, had my first kid,
Yes.
my first child right before walking, actually. 2 months after graduating with my doctorate, I had my oldest. But the entire time, with the focus on ensuring that I was able to be at the decision-making tables in higher education institutions. And after I completed my doctorate, I was very specific and intentional about going back to the community college, because that's where most people of minoritized backgrounds and of impoverished backgrounds start higher education experiences. And so that's where I wanted to be, because that's who I wanted to help. I was one of 900 Latino students at OU at the time that I was an undergrad there. So that was super impactful to me, and really, again, the reason why I decided to go into education.
Yeah. Boy, what a great story. It's just an incredible story. And you faced so many challenges along the way. And so one of the main motivators for this webcast is really trying to understand those challenges. And it's based upon this idea of this book flow that we've talked about in the past, about how people are in the zone. Hi to a sooner.
Yes, my little
co-worker.
co-workers. My other
Yes.
OU, my Olivia Urueta, is sitting in the room, and I asked her to be quiet, but it's not working.
That's great. Oh, that's great. So overcoming challenges and being in the zone. And so I have two questions for you. One is, what would be an example of one of the biggest challenges that you've gone after? And the second sort of follow-on question to that is, how have you met that challenge by, let's say, by skilling up or by building up experience or so? So there's two kind of dimensions that the book goes into in great depth. And I think you have a great story to tell there.
Yes, so I think the breadcrumbs are finally getting to the biggest piece of bread, right? That's really I think the foundation for why I do what I do. So I mentioned my mom's a widow because having a single parent and a single income in a house of four is hard, especially as an immigrant, and especially when your degrees are not recognized in the country where you're migrating. So the community college was vital for her to be able to stay viable economically on her student visa. She had a work study job too. So I know that we are, again, community college is the foundation and the hope for many people to enter into professions that provide them living wages, right, to support their families. But again, I started first because I knew there were very few minoritized populations at four-year state flagships. My experience was we weren't there, but I know we're just as smart as everybody else and just as capable. When you start looking at the economics of education is when you start to see why there's such a huge stratification and such a difference in the engagement of certain communities and different types of institutions. So I wanted to, that's what I want, is to remove barriers for all people to be able to complete degrees so that they can earn living wages. And the reason why that's personal for me is because I know that, and I'm happy. So I'm one of those people that's happy to provide whatever tax monies I need to provide to help my fellow men and women, right? I would love it if we had more opportunities for people, especially impoverished communities or minoritized communities, to be able to participate in education, to be able to quickly get into the job force.
Yes.
So we're seeing it now. We're seeing now that a lot of the populations that are most impacted, not only by the pandemic, but by the unemployment, is people who don't have even certificates. It's something that could take not very much time, less than a year to complete, can be the ticket for a person to have a living wage job. So when we help each other, we all do better. It's just one of those things where it makes sense to ensure that the baseline for everybody is a living wage where they can feed their children and have their own homes. We know what it does to our schools and to all of the institutions that we need to survive. And so that's my bread now. The crumbs have led me to that, and that's what my goal is.
So that's the challenge that you are seeking. How did you skill up essentially to meet those challenges?
Sure. So a lot of actually the opportunities I had at OU from the start helped me. I studied abroad in two different places, in two different programs. I went to Limoges, France, and I went to China. And just the ability to be able to see through other people's lenses, through other people's life experiences, I think really helped me to value my own life experience and the things that I know in my culture. It helped me to be more proud of who I am as well. I think whenever we are not of the majority culture, we try to diminish and to silence ourselves, to be more like the prominent culture. And I have found that it doesn't fit me well, and it doesn't fit a lot of our students well. So studying abroad and being at OU did that for me. The other thing I've noticed is that this is a field like many others where you have to know the right people and get training beyond your educational experiences. So I have participated in many fellowship opportunities. I'm currently part of the Aspen Future Presidents Institute, which, as I mentioned to you, the Aspen Award given to community colleges annually is like our Oscars. And so being able to be selected for participation in their fellowship to train future presidents is one of the highest honors I have received, but also it's promising to be an excellent training opportunity to become a leader at a community college in the future. Being involved in volunteer opportunities. I'm currently president-elect for the Texas Association of Chicanos in Higher Education. I don't get paid for this. I volunteered to do this. And I do it willingly because it's an opportunity for me to work with Latinos across the state of Texas, Latinos, Chicanos, however they want to self-identify, but essentially people in the field of higher education at all levels and institutions to fortify our community through engagement in higher education. So, you know, it's key to participate in those types of opportunities because they also provide great networking opportunities. I've learned a lot from really great people that I've met through those opportunities. And so that's definitely something that I value and I encourage folks to do. But I also acknowledge that those are very privileged opportunities too. You have to have support from your supervisors. You have to have the money. Some of these things are thousands of dollars to participate.
Yes. And I'm very intrigued by this, the Mommies on the Move, which I know you're a co-founder. So I wonder if you could share some, and I love the title, the hashtag VP Mommy. I like that a lot. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that, Mayra.
Sure. So aside from the fact that there's not a lot of diversity in positions of leadership anywhere, but also in higher education, there's not a lot of women who choose to have a family and who choose to be, you know, in relationship and partnership with someone. Many times in my experience, women are divorced or women are single because they, you know, it's just not, it's not friendly to family people, especially to women. And so we created Mommies on the Move because we are creating for others what we were hoping to have ourselves. That is to have women who are mothers, who are family members, but also have high aspirations for themselves. And then going back to the comment I made earlier, a lot of what we're sharing are all those hidden politics and all the, you know, it's like you don't feel and you don't have problems once you're in these roles, and we still, you know, debate and fight against imposter syndrome, and we're honest about that. You know, we talk about the struggles that we encounter as we have been moving up, but we're also seeking to empower women, especially women who are mothers, of course, to allow themselves to see themselves in roles in executive leadership and in faculty leadership, because a lot of times I did this to myself. I rolled myself out of any leadership the moment I decided I wanted to have kids, because I don't see many moms in leadership. And then I got a crazy bug inside of me when I was pregnant with my second child, and I read the Lean In book. But then another really great one that's called How Remarkable Women Lead. And many of those books talk about, it is women who are mothers who talk about how they mother unapologetically and make their motherhood part of their everyday life because they know they're role modeling for others. So there was nobody from higher education as part of the last book. But I just thought this is what we need. We need this in higher education. And I think specifically for Latinas, we needed to have this space because the demographics of Texas and the country show that we're here. There's a lot of us. And so it's vital for Latinos, it's vital for our community in general, but vital for institutions if they're going to thrive, to have people and women who are mothers see themselves in leadership and go for those positions.
What would be a good example of what are kinds of things that you do in this Mommies on the Move to, you know, do the same kinds of things, you know, help people pick those challenges and skill up to meet those challenges, Mayra?
Sure. So through our blog, we give people insight into the audacity of our brains. How dare we think of these big things, right? for ourselves when maybe they haven't been thought of or verbalized before. But the other things that we are offering to those who would like to have our service is we will review CVs. If you're interested in applying for a position, we will look at cover letters. Tarrant, my colleague who is my partner, Tarrant Osuna Allen, who works at TCU, she's an associate professor. She will review tenure packets for people who are on the tenure track. So again, it's a lot of that like advice that you seek from your friends, or we don't often have a lot of access to people who are in positions that we aspire to be into. And so as we have been gaining the experience and getting beat up ourselves along the way, we have learned. And so what we want to bring to everybody is the opportunity to learn the hidden politics and just kind of how to maneuver and work the system. I mean, to your point in the book, we make the time to make this happen. And so the laundry might get washed, but it might sit there for a while unfolded. And we actually have pictures of that on the blog because we prioritize what we choose to engage in, right? And we also don't want to provide a facade that if you can do everything and that you can find balance. None of those things are true. And it's just about being intentional with what we choose, but also even within what we choose, knowing what needs to be prioritized when.
Which then brings us to our final four, which is our fun category. So you're incredibly busy. You're working full time. You're a mom of 2 kids, and you have the blog. And so, but what do you do for fun outside of those things, Mayra?
Man, well, I love to sleep.
Well,
Any weekend, right?
Yes.
Any weekend where I can sneak a nap in, I am so happy. But I'm a super relational person. So really the biggest thing that fills my bucket is socializing. So this COVID has really hurt me in my bucket filling, because if I'm not out with my family, I'm out with my friends, I'm out with colleagues. That's usually how I get my joy, is being and interacting with other people. I love to write. I have really enjoyed the writing piece of the Mamis. I have found that super helpful. And hanging out with my kids, of course, is great here. The latest one, and I think a vital read for anybody that manages, is called The Coaching Habit. And it is such a great book, because I think a lot of times, and especially for women, as we manage, we try to provide our folks a lot of answers, right? And just naturally, I think as women and as moms, we want to fix and we want to do things for people, which transfers into how we manage. And it's not always the best way to teach, and it's not always the best way to function as a manager, because I can't take on the job of my folks. So it was a really great eye-opening book for me, and I would recommend it again for any manager, but specifically I think for women. We watched Steel Magnolias. Sally Field, Julia Roberts, love that. And then currently, one of the things that I'll go to a lot has been one of the shows that have brought me the most joy while we've been in quarantine, Queer Eye.
Oh, right.
Queer Eye.
Okay.
I binge watch that show, like all the seasons, probably in a week, because it just is something totally different from my life and what I do, and it just it's a feel-good show. Food, enchiladas, and I usually will make them at home, but they're emulating enchiladas that we used to eat when we were eating in Monterrey, and there's one place in San Antonio that makes them, Rosario's, and it's so good. The Mexican enchiladas platter, and then drink, it's gotta be a Moscow Mule, because a mama needs to relax. So Moscow Mule has been making it work for me.
That sounds so good. Thank you so much. I wish we could continue this, and I hope we can continue it in person at some point when things get better, but thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. I hope we inspire lots of mommies here and lots of men to support their partners. And I appreciate your time so much. And thanks again for the honor of the invitation.
That's great.